Welcome to Digitally Transformed, the podcast that brings you the latest insights into the ever-evolving world of technology. In this fast-paced digital age, staying ahead of the curve is more crucial than ever. Having the right partner to decipher what is important and useful can make all of the difference. Infused Innovations is a leading authority in transformative technology solutions. From bolstering cybersecurity defenses to equipping employees with the tools they need to excel, our experts are here to guide businesses of all kinds through their digital transformation journey. Listen in as we delve into captivating discussions about groundbreaking trends, emerging technologies, and their profound impact on the way we work and do business. From the practical applications of artificial intelligence to the fascinating world of machine learning, we'll uncover the possibilities that lie within our digital future. You're listening to Digitally Transformed, a podcast powered by Infused Innovations. Here's your host, Justin Starbird.
Welcome back to the Digitally Transformed podcast. My name is Justin Starbird. Today, I get to welcome back to the show for Series 2 for our second episode, CIO of Infused Innovations, Phil Magnuszewski. Phil, thanks for joining me today.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah, this is great. We went on a little bit of a hiatus with the Digitally Transformed podcast, but we are kicking into high gear right now, and it's pretty exciting as to why. We'll get into that in a minute. As a chief innovation officer for, a company like Infused Innovations, tell me a little bit about your role.
Yeah, so I have a kind of a dual role here at Infused Innovations. One is as Chief Innovation Officer, as you mentioned. It's my job to constantly explore and identify emerging technologies that will work for us and for our clients in their business and find applicability for those things, whether it's AI or blockchain or augmented reality for that matter. And then the second part of what I do here is I head up our innovation lab. So it's a conduit for our clients to identify, explore, and then find ways to monetize some of these emerging technologies as they relate to their particular business strategies. So it's a fun job.
Yeah, no doubt. Tell me a little bit more about the Innovation Lab, because of course it feels like right now you'd probably be quite busy, taking in all these emerging technologies and seeing where they fit. How do clients interact with that?
Yeah, so you're right. It is really busy right now. There have been a lot of developments that we've seen over the past, 6-9 months that have really kind of pushed things forward. Organizations can think of the Innovation Lab as kind of a first pass in some ways. So we take a look at what's going on at the real bleeding edge out there, whether it's like I mentioned before, AI or blockchain or even quantum computing, where that's going to impact organizations down the road. We do a bunch of internal R&D. So we're actually playing around, touching the technologies. We're in some early adopter programs that get us early access to some of this stuff so that we can understand how they work, where they fit, where the guardrails might be on these things as well. And then when an organization wants to explore that in a real life use case, right, for their own business, they can engage us in a way that's relatively low risk, gets them a quick time to value for some of the proof of concepts or pilots we might do. But, an organization might engage us. We've done engagements for computer vision projects that have gone from ideation to full-blown MVP in 12 weeks. So It's a real quick time to value that we kind of pride ourselves on.
Right now you mentioned guardrails on some of the, potential, projects or looking at, technology in a relatively controlled setting up, maybe not quite a vacuum, but as close to it as you can create. And, of course, one of the, topics at the forefront of everybody's tongue right now is, AI and machine learning. And you're hosting a webinar called OpenAI Unleashed, Empowering Organizational Productivity on June 22nd at noon local time. Tell me a little bit about, the impetus behind the need to put a webinar like this together.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And, there's just a lot of questions around it, right? There's so much buzz for this particular topic that you're seeing on the news, in magazines, online. I talk to probably 6 to 10 organizations a week on this particular topic, and there are some recurring themes. People want to know, where does it fit? How do I deploy it? What does it mean in terms of the number of employees I might have? How do I do it? How do I implement it in an ethical way in the organization? So it's new in a lot of ways. It was kind of unleashed really interestingly into the world by OpenAI back in the really early December. So it was kind of like opening Pandora's box, and you have this incredibly powerful tool, which is going to transform almost every industry out there. But this tool that's just been kind of thrown out to the wild, and people are playing around with it, kind of experimenting, don't really know where the fit is for it, and quite frankly, where some of the fears lie around it, whether again that's with jobs or what we call responsible AI and the ethical use of those things as well.
Sure. You guys sit in a good spot in terms of the company and Infused Innovations as a whole. We kind of joke at the beginning of this about coming back from a little bit of a hiatus, especially relative to the podcast, but really it was had to do a lot with some of the projects you had going on. Talk a little bit about a year ago today, and maybe what led us to this point.
Yeah, so a year ago, we've had the idea of really formally launching an innovation lab for a while. But I think some of the technologies had started to mature to a point that where, like in the area of AI, you don't need to be a data scientist today to really unlock some of the value of that technology. Blockchain had come along the way. We started doing a little bit of blockchain with NFT type work for some organizations as well. So we saw that there was this kind of percolating of these emerging technologies that kind of went from theory really quickly into having products that were usable, not just by the, your super, technical folks in your organization, but business users, right? We call, citizen developers is a concept that we use in this space. And we saw that coming and we're like, oh my gosh, it's like we have all this great, incredibly powerful stuff, but it's just being thrown out there. And there's no, I guess, formalized or structured framework or way for organizations and individuals to understand it and then figure out how to use it and deploy it in a way that makes the best sense for an organization. So we've always kind of been on the forefront of kind of seeing around the corners with some of this stuff. And that's one of the things we've been doing over the past year is really, okay, what does the landscape look like? And how do we best help our clients take advantage of those technologies?
Yeah, it's a great point. Where you've been kind of at the forefront of things. There isn't a specific roadmap in terms of like how you deploy, AI or machine learning. What are some of the questions that clients or prospective clients, come to you for and say, where do I start?
Yeah, that's another great question. Some of the things they're asking about is, the cost is always a big part of it, right? So we'll just get that out of the way at the very beginning. And people want to understand, what is it going to cost me to get into this space? And we've obviously, as I mentioned, developed some ways to do that in a lower cost model. As an organization, how do I prepare culturally for some of these changes that are going to happen as a result, especially around AI? AI, as I mentioned, is an incredibly powerful tool that helps productivity. It helps unlock information in the organization as well. So what do I have to do, especially as a leadership level, to get people comfortable and get them understanding that we're not looking to, put you out of a job. We're looking to help you do your job better, right? And to make things easier in some ways for you. And then it's like, okay, well, once I have an understanding of, here's what I have to do to kind of prime the organization and get it ready. What mechanism do I, how do I identify the right use cases, right? How do I determine what a real ROI might be on a particular project? Because some of those things this is new to a lot of organizations. So trying to understand, how do I get my return on that investment and what does that look like? And then we're also, especially as we're talking about like the generative AI thing that's really kind of taken over the press again. Where are the ethical boundaries around some of those things? That is one of the biggest questions I get.
And I want to get to the ethics of it as well. One of the questions that keeps coming up, we talk about return on investment, we talk about how much it actually costs. What are some of the projects, that you can actually accomplish? I mean, thinking generally speaking, relative to, say, a manufacturing or, a restrictive space like healthcare or financial services.
Yeah.
Forget, correct me if I'm wrong, but, you can create tailored approaches for each one of those industries based on their needs.
You can, but there are some, I would say, generalized areas that you could, draw the correlations between industry or very specific use cases. One is anytime there's a repetitive task that you're asking someone to do, and it could be something as simple as, quality control off an assembly line, right? We want to take an end product, capture an image of it, compare it to what the perfect product looks like, and then identify potential variations in that. And it may have to go back and get redone or be, discarded at some point. Same holds true for anything internally in an organization from an administrative standpoint. Administrative overhead. I don't know anyone, or very few people anyways, I should say, that wouldn't love to have some of the overhead and administrative burden relieved from the work that they do on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah.
And you start getting into things like chat bots and, AI assistants that can start to chip away at some of those things to kind of take, again, away some of that repetitive work. And then the other area that's really kind of common now is unlocking information and data value across the organization. Depending on the stats you look at, anywhere from 50 to 80% of data in an organization is considered dark data. And what that means, it's sitting there, just no one knows it's there, right? So it doesn't do the business any good if you don't have access to it and aren't able to use that in making a business decision. So one of the things we're starting to see in the AI space is, how do I build out a corpus, curate the information across the organization in a way that allows me to now unlock the value of, the tribal knowledge, even in some cases, so that I can make better business decisions as an organization.
Yeah. And, you mentioned just before that about, working with like repetitive tasks, and those two elements I feel like, play into the culture piece that you talked about. How do you prepare your team for, deploying a solution? And one of the elements is, it helps reduce fatigue or burnout, or, improves company culture, because now, as your as CEO Jeff Wilhelm said, previously, it gives you an opportunity to focus on, the interconnections, the personal connection elements of the business that, people crave that connection. And then, now all of a sudden you're no longer having to compete on price on everything, because you have the human element that you can really add to whatever solution you're providing.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, being able to allow individuals do what they can be really good at, right? It's that personal connection, the personal relationships that can be built without distracting them with, filling out, a CRM system or something else. Some of those things can be automated now.
Yeah. You mentioned, previously talking ethics and, the some of the fears and around the nefarious, characters that, could be utilizing AI for their own gain or some other reason. How do you alleviate some of those fears, and what have you and the team, done to make sure that you're in a great spot?
Yeah, so we were at some of the early stages of this back in, I think, 2019, right, when AI was really starting to take off from it's no longer just a data scientist tool. It became more available to the general population. We were one of the first organizations that I'm aware of that really kind of focused and included what we call responsible AI practices into everything we do. So what that means is there's 6 pillars that we'll look at, including things like transparency and accessibility of the models. Privacy and security is important. So there's these guidelines that we have in place. And before we embark on any project with our clients, we kind of look through that project through the lens of those pillars, those principles. And if it doesn't check all of those boxes, if there's something we say, you know what, you're going to end up with a biased result, and it's going to have a negative impact or an overweighted impact in some way, we're not going to pursue that project with that client, and we will advise them not to move forward with that project, and we'll give them reasons for that as well.
Yeah.
But I think unless you have that guidepost and that lens that you're looking through as you're exploring this space, you're going to find yourself, it maybe not out of the gate you're over here and doing something that's really nefarious or something unethical, but it's really easy to take half steps towards that mark. And before you know it, you're way over here when, you shouldn't be, far away from where the real ethical approaches to AI. Yeah,
absolutely. Well, so here we are talking a little bit about the OpenAI Unleashed, the Empowering Organizational Productivity webinar that you're going to be giving in a couple of weeks. You're going to be covering topics like, where to get started, some problems to identify, or, what situations would make for a great implementation. What else will we be talking about on the webinar?
The use cases, I think, are eye-opening. And I think that's important for people to understand that, because what we've seen with a lot of the emerging technologies, it's very kind of ethereal in some ways. Sure. You hear the terms, you hear the buzzwords, but you don't really understand what it means, to the business. And what we found is that if you can show someone and give some examples, clear examples in terms of what it looks like, what the results are, there are a lot of light bulbs that end up going off.
So let me break that down for just a moment, because we've in preparation about talking about the webinar, one of the things that came up was that there's a lot of noise out there, with companies slapping GPT on whatever solution, or AI onto the beginning of anything, or via IO on the end of all their URLs now, and right. And it doesn't necessarily mean anything. And you're telling me that you already have use cases that have been completed and that you have happy clients that have been successful. We're not even 6 months into this, so that's crazy.
It is, and some of it goes back to, as I mentioned, we've always been on the cutting edge, and we've been working with GPT for almost a year now. We were in some of the early adopter programs, and there's things that we couldn't talk about under NDA, but so we did some initial R&D. We built some initial use cases, a couple of applications we built on top of it as well. So yeah, we've understood, I think, for a long time what the technology was capable. So we kind of hit the ground running when it became public. And all the things we talked about, the responsible AI, the data and security pieces, which are incredibly important to this as well. We have all that stuff kind of baked in already. And then you map that into our, accelerated MVP process for customers. We can get them going pretty quickly in some of these use cases.
Awesome. And we're also going to be doing a demo.
We are. Live demos are always fun. But I think one of the things we'll look to show is kind of a gamut of demos, some really kind of basic stuff that they can kind of see, but there's some really advanced stuff that we'll be demoing as well that really kind of, especially if you're a business leader, will really kind of maybe be an aha moment, especially when you start talking about things like analyzing data in spreadsheets, which every organization has spreadsheets. So, being able to quickly grab the information, pull out and tease out the trends and analysis of that data really quickly, pretty cool stuff.
That's awesome. All right. So the webinar is called OpenAI Unleashed, Empowering Organizational Productivity. You can find more on LinkedIn at our Infused Innovation on our team page. or the link will be on the on this podcast overview too. So that's great. Anything else we should know about what's coming?
It's changing. So what we think we have baked now may change in 2 weeks, because the market and the technology is changing so quickly, that again, it's our job, and it's becoming even difficult for us to keep up. But our ability to do that, and then to help organizations kind of extrapolate from that where it's going. Like, I want to talk to organizations about what's happening a year from now and what that means, because it's moving that fast. You have to really start thinking about leapfrogging versus trying to just catch up. The world is changing that fast.
Yeah. Well, I just think it's so cool that you and the team have been doing this for a while. You have what we call, in my world, social proof, in terms of successful case studies and happy customers that are thrilled with the results so far. So, it isn't new to you, despite the fact it's new to everybody else. I think that's always so neat. And the other part is, like, when you see, as people are on the sidelines watching their competitors to see what else happens in their market, the ones that come forward and say, hey, we're using it, that means they've been using it for months already. So yeah, right. I mean, it's not just today they put it out there and was like, oh, we started yesterday.
That's exactly right. And because, going back to my point about it's changing so fast, is like, if you're seeing that and haven't done anything yet, like, you're not just like a week, a month, a quarter behind. You could be almost a year behind in some areas. So the sooner that you can understand that and internalize what this tech can kind of bring to your business, you need to move off the mark as quickly as possible, in my opinion.
Yeah. Well, you've been listening to the latest episode of Digitally Transformed, powered by Infused Innovation. On behalf of my guest, Phil Magnuszewski, CIO of Infused Innovation. Phil, thanks for joining me today.
This is great. Thank you so much, Justin.
Until next time.
Thank you for listening to Digitally Transformed, a podcast powered by Infused Innovations. For more information and to learn more about this topic or explore other resources, go to our website, infusedinnovations.com. On behalf of our guests and host Justin Starbird, thank you for listening.